Number 10. Japanese Spider Crab. Out of all the most dangerous crustaceans in the world, the Japanese spider crab is without a doubt the largest of them all. The Japanese spider crab is the biggest crab in the world, able to grow over 12 feet in length. The reason it's called a spider crab is because it really looks like a massive underwater spider with its extremely long legs scuttling across the ocean floor. These crabs can also be pretty heavy, weighing up to 44 pounds. And as the biggest crustaceans in the world, the Japanese spider crab doesn't have a lot of predators to worry about. They eat anything they can get their claws on, including the bodies of dead creatures that have floated down to the ocean floor. There are even legends about Japanese spider crabs dragging sailors overboard and eating them alive. This is probably unlikely, but still, the average Japanese spider crab can live for over 100 years. That's a pretty long time. Their legs are also super muscular, and they can move at lightning fast speeds. With their strong claws, they could easily rip apart another animal or even a human if it came down to it. The good news is that since they live deep in the ocean, you're probably not going to have to fight one anytime soon. They're also not that aggressive, unless of course you're infringing on their territory. Number 9. The Remipede. The Remipede is one of the least known crustaceans in the ocean. It's also the only venomous crustacean known to man. Have you ever heard of it before? According to Mental Floss, there are at least 70,000 species of crustacean, including many different crabs, lobsters, and shrimp. This tiny creature looks a lot like a little white centipede, with a very long body and all kinds of legs. Where does this dangerous crustacean live? In underground caves in Mexico. They were first described by scientists in the 1980s after being discovered in the vast cave networks beneath Mexico. But it was only recently that researchers found out they were venomous. According to biologists from the Natural History Museum in London, remipedes have fangs on either side of their head which are connected to a reservoir of fluid. Stored inside these reservoirs is a poison created by a special venom gland deep within the crustacean's body. How poisonous could it really be? Well, it's very similar to the venom from a viper. It produces a special neurotoxin that is able to paralyze its victim. The remipede employs a mixture of venoms that are highly dangerous, but because of their isolated cave location, there have never been any reported deaths. Hey, real quick, if this is your first time checking out the channel, welcome! Give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 8. Mantis Shrimp. The mantis shrimp has the strongest punch of any animal. This might be a hard thing to believe considering the mantis shrimp is an extremely small crustacean, but it's absolutely true. Pow pow! The mantis shrimp punches with the outstanding force of a .22 caliber bullet. This is a scary amount of force exhibited by such a small animal, but it doesn't have anything to do with the mantis shrimp's muscles. Instead, it has spring-loaded arms. Mother Nature really did a remarkable job putting this creature together. With its spring-loaded arm, the mantis shrimp can punch at an amazing 75 feet per second. According to scientists from the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, the shrimp's arm kind of works like a bow and arrow. The muscles bend backwards like an archer's bow being readied for shooting, and when the muscle releases, all that energy shoots forward, concentrated at the tip of the mantis shrimp's club, which in this analogy is the arrow. But can the mantis shrimp punch through a human? The answer is absolutely not. They only use this amazing ability to break the shells of their prey so that they can eat. You're not going to be punched unconscious by a mantis shrimp anytime soon, it's okay. Number 7. Osama bin Crabbin. If you believe in reincarnation, you might want to skip this next story because it's horrifying. According to the Daily Mail, a family recently discovered the face of Osama bin Laden imprinted on the underside of a crab. This happened in Washington state, when the family found the man's face staring straight back at them from the belly of this freakish crustacean while taking a crabbing trip near Everett. They even managed to capture the incident on video, and as you can tell by the images, there is no denying who this crab looks like. The family found the crab while they were unloading a pot of crustaceans into their boat, but at the time nobody noticed. The crab was female and illegal to keep, so the family chucked it back into the ocean. It wasn't until they checked their footage later and they realised that the face of the world's most notorious radical had been stained onto its bottom. But what could this mean? Is this crab plotting some kind of mass attack from the cover of the ocean? Should we be worried? Number 6. The Pistol Shrimp. The pistol shrimp is a biological anomaly. It's one of the only crustaceans on Earth that has a legitimate superpower. The pistol shrimp is able to generate a water jet to annihilate anything threatening to eat it. When it does this, it becomes one of the loudest creatures on the planet. But how does this power work? It has a lot to do with one of the pistol shrimp's claws, which has a modified plunger that fits into a modified socket. The shrimp is able to close its pincer with such ferocity that it causes a jet of water to be squeezed through a special groove, creating a powerful blast of liquid that can destroy any potential predator. But what's even more fascinating is that when it snaps its claw shut, the popping noise generated is one of the loudest natural sounds on the planet. Prepare to be even more amazed. The pistol shrimp closes its claw so quickly that it creates a cavitation bubble so intensely powerful that it reaches a temperature that is nearly as high as what's found on the surface of the sun. However, it's too fast to see with human eyes. It literally only lasts a fraction of a second, resulting in an extremely bright glow that can only be seen with a special instrument. Number 5. Toxic crabs. Crabs and lobsters are some of the most expensive meals you can get in a restaurant. But did you know that only a handful of crab species are commonly featured in seafood restaurants and fish markets? This is because not every crab is safe to eat. They are known as toxic crabs and they carry lethal doses of toxins. Most toxic crabs belong to the family known as Xanthidae, with the most toxic crab in all of Australia having a black-tipped claw. All of these crabs are notoriously poisonous, and yet they don't actually produce any toxins. Scientists agree that toxic crabs probably get all of their nasty bacteria through their diet. Because crabs do not have any kind of mechanism for delivering a toxin, they are only poisonous when people eat them. But just listen to what kind of toxins these crabs really have. The xanthid crabs mostly accumulate saxitoxin and tetrodotoxin, which are two of the most lethal and deadly substances known to man. The toxins typically build up inside of their muscles and their egg masses. Just 0.5 milligram of either toxin is enough to kill a human adult. Plus, the toxins are incredibly stable to heat, meaning they will still be found in the crab meat after being cooked. This is not widely known by the public, but now you can at least be aware that you can't just eat any old dirty crab you find. It could be the last meal you ever eat. Number 4. Lobster diving. Crabs, shrimp, and lobsters can prove deadly to humans. But the act of actually catching these critters is far more dangerous than they could ever be themselves. Alaskan fishermen face some of the deadliest working conditions on the planet, but at least they have a boat to fish on. One of the most dangerous activities around today is lobster diving, in which a fisherman dives into the water to snatch up the lobsters themselves. It's a widely popular activity that can turn deadly. Take the case of a California lobster diver named Ryan Huff, who died in 2019 trying to catch some lobsters. The day was going just fine until Ryan's friends heard his spear gun go off. They never saw him return to the surface. They quickly panicked, swam to the area where Ryan was last seen, and went down to rescue him. 2 other divers found the man stuck on his own line 25 feet below the surface of the water, completely unconscious. It's believed that Ryan got his spear stuck in a rock and tried to free it, at which point he experienced a shallow water blackout. This is what happens when your oxygen supply is suddenly reduced, usually by an abrupt ascent. Unfortunately, Ryan lost his life in this lobster diving accident. Number 3. Isopods. Isopods may not seem scary. After all, walk out into your garden and move some dirt around and you'll probably find dozens of tiny isopods, commonly known as pill bugs. But lurking deep down in the ocean, there is a much more frightening isopod that survives by finding a host fish and taking its place as its tongue. These isopods live off the coast of France, in the Mediterranean Sea, and in a few other random places. But the way these marine isopods differ from their crustacean cousins like shrimps and crabs is that they are parasitic. First, the marine isopod must find a host. It will take its position on the fish's tongue, at which point it uses its claws to cut off the circulation of blood to the tongue. Over time, the fish's tongue will fall off. The isopod then replaces the tongue with its own body. Throughout this entire process, the fish has no idea what's going on. By the time the isopod has taken its place in the fish's mouth, nobody is the wiser. The parasite isopod then spends the rest of its life functioning as a real tongue, surviving off whatever food the fish eats. Of course, this could never happen to humans, but it's still frightening. Number 2. Crab of Death. There is a deadly crustacean known as the Crab of Death. It is the most poisonous crab located anywhere near the Singapore coast, and apparently there have been documented deaths from people eating it. This is one of those toxic crabs we talked about before. It's called the mosaic crab, and it's actually considered endangered. The crab gets its name because of the strange red shell, which is often covered in a weird mosaic of beautiful white artwork. It truly is an amazing looking crab, but you should absolutely never touch it, and for sure never eat it. The crab is known for eating the poisonous sea cucumber that also lives in the waters near Singapore and absorbing the cucumber's toxins into its body. The toxin is so robust that cooking the crab will not destroy it. When the mosaic crab is eaten, whoever's eating it will get a full dose and suffer the consequences. Number 1. The coconut crab. Finally, we have reached the end of the list and the most terrifying crustacean on the planet. The coconut crab is the ugliest, most savage, and toughest crab ever. The coconut crab has been known to kill birds, it can break bones, and many people believe that coconut crabs are responsible for eating Amelia Earhart. In fact, Charles Darwin described the gigantic coconut crab as monstrous, saying it was the only word he could use to describe such a beast. This is no ordinary crab. It's about 3 feet long and weighs up to 9 pounds, but it's strong enough that it can carry 6 times its own body weight. The claws of the coconut crab are as strong as the jaws of a lion. If you were to be attacked by one of these crabs, it could easily pinch your hand off. The pincers of this crab are one of the most dangerous tools in the animal kingdom. Luckily, coconut crabs will usually leave people alone. They spend the majority of their time hunting birds, tearing open live pigs, and cannibalizing other coconut crabs. They even eat their own skin when shedding their exoskeletons and growing a new one. Another amazing fact about the coconut crab is that it's an amazing climber, and this is where the name comes in. Coconut crabs are known for climbing coconut trees, knocking down coconuts, and then using their huge claws to crack them open. And if there aren't enough coconuts around, you might want to be careful. Number 10. Roti Island snake-necked turtle. By far one of the strangest and most exotic reptiles in the world has to be the Roti Island snake-necked turtle. This turtle is striking to look at with its ridiculously long neck. This is one of the only turtles in the world that has a neck so long that it is unable to withdraw its head all the way back into its shell like other turtles. Instead, the turtle has to tuck its neck into its shell sideways. It almost makes you wonder what having a neck this long could possibly be good for. This unique turtle is only found throughout Australia, some parts of New Guinea, and of course on Roti Island in Indonesia. They love to hide in the swampy wetlands, small lakes, and rice terraces. This genus of turtle is believed to have diverged from another turtle genus at least 70 million years ago, meaning it began evolving into what it is now way before the extinction of the dinosaurs. The result is certainly fascinating. The snake-necked turtle is able to live both on land and in fresh water, though it prefers building its nest somewhere dry and away from the water. Number 9. Desperate leaf chameleon. The desperate leaf chameleon is one of the most bizarre reptiles you can find on the island of Madagascar. They're also one of the saddest reptiles in the world. It was only first discovered in 2012 by a doctor from Germany, and it was named accordingly, Brachysia desperata, as a way of trying to provoke thought regarding how desperately it is trying to survive. This is because its habitat is currently in decline, and the chameleon is now considered critically endangered because its home is being cleared by timber extraction to make room for cattle and to make room for crops. So, the desperate leaf chameleon truly is desperate. As for the chameleon itself, it is tiny. The desperate leaf chameleon is just around 1 inch long. It lives in the leaf litter in the rainforest in a cramped area in northern Madagascar that is less than 31 miles squared. They like to feed on small insects, and they use their camouflage to hide from predators. When disrupted, these chameleons will play dead in an effort to resemble a fallen leaf, which they look a lot like. They are easiest to find at night when they sleep on the small leaves and shrubs. Hey, before we continue, I just want to say thanks for checking out the channel. If you're liking this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Number 8. Red Spitting Cobra. Cobras are terrifying enough as it is. It doesn't even make sense that there are a legitimate red spitting cobra living in the world right now. This is one of the deadliest animals on the planet, but it's also incredibly rare and unique. This small cobra only grows to be around 4 or 5 feet in length, and they only live in eastern parts of Africa. And when I said this is one of the deadliest animals in the world, I really meant it. Even though the cobra is mostly into eating birds, eggs, frogs, and other amphibians, it can do some serious damage to humans. It all comes down to how the red spitting cobra produces its venom. Not only can it bite you and cause pain, swelling, tissue decay, even worse, it can spit its venom at you from at least 6 feet away. And when threatened, it will not hesitate to spit or bite. It rears up and displays its cobra hood and hisses loudly. In experiments conducted by researchers, the red spitting cobra rarely misses its target, their victim's eyes. The only good news is that if the red spitting cobra shoots its venom at your face, you probably won't die. But then again, if you get the toxins in your eyes, it could mean temporary or permanent blindness. What's even worse is that according to the African Snakebite Institute, the dangerous red spitting cobra has been known to sneak into houses at night and bite people. Number 7. The Pancake Tortoise. The Pancake Tortoise is arguably the coolest tortoise in all existence. The tortoise gets its name because it is literally as flat as a pancake. But don't let its appearance fool you. The Pancake Tortoise is incredibly fast for a turtle, flexible, and an unusually skilled escape artist. Its shell is indeed as flat as a pancake, but it actually helps the tortoise go faster. They can grow to be around 6 to 7 inches long and 1 inch tall. According to the San Diego Zoo, this is the fastest species of tortoise in the world. Its shell is filled with little holes, which make it lightweight and agile. And whereas most tortoises will hide in their shell when they feel danger is near, the pancake tortoise will instead make a break for it and run away. Plus, because its shell is so flexible, the tortoise is able to crawl into narrow crevices and other tight places where no other tortoise would be able to hide. They're also pretty great climbers, which is useful when trying to avoid predators. In the wild, the only 2 real threats to the pancake tortoise are mongooses and wild dogs. Another really interesting fact is that when the pancake tortoise is born, it will have a domed shell just like any other tortoise. However, as the tortoise grows, its shell gets flatter and flatter. And if you were wondering where the pancake tortoise lives, it makes its home in the scrublands of East Africa. Number 6. Round Island Keel-Scaled Boa. The Round Island Keel-Scaled Boa is one of the rarest and most fascinating reptiles in the world. It is the only snake within its genus, and it is found on one small island off the coast of Mauritius, which itself is a tiny island nation in the Indian Ocean. Because of the snake's incredible isolation, it was once at risk of going extinct. But there was recently a program that reintroduced rabbits to Round Island, allowing stable numbers of the Keel-Scaled Boa to return. These snakes only grow to be about 5 feet long. Their bodies are covered in tiny little keeled scales, making them look extremely unique. The Round Island Keel-Scaled Boa gets its name from the ridged or keeled scales on its dorsal surface. Very little is known about their biology, but they are known to be mainly arboreal. Plus, the snake has specialized skin cells which allow it to change its color every 24 hours. The snake becomes darker during the day when they don't move around very much, allowing them to better camouflage themselves. At night, they become lighter while they are more active and hunting for lizards. Number 5. The Frilled Dragon. It really doesn't get much cooler than the Frilled Dragon. It's the most unique and most recognizable lizard of all time. You probably recognize this animal from the infamous scene in Jurassic Park when the scientist is attacked by a giant frilled lizard while sitting in his jeep. But this is an actual animal in real life. Mind you, it's not big enough to break into your car and bite you in the face, but it's a fascinating little creature. When threatened, the frilled lizard will expand the skin flap around its neck to the size of a dinner plate. When the twin frills on either side of the lizard's head are open, it practically doubles in size, reaching a maximum length of 33 inches. This is enough to horrify most potential predators and send them running. It also helps that the frilled lizard opens its mouth and shows off its huge teeth. Where do these little monsters live? If you guessed Australia, you'd be 100% correct. They spend 90% of their lives in the treetops. They primarily live throughout the top third of the country, and they can even be found in New Guinea. The frilled lizards in New Guinea tend to be quite a bit smaller than their Australian counterparts. Number 4. Madagascar Leaf-Nosed Snake. It should be no surprise to anyone that Madagascar is home to many of the most fascinating reptiles in the world. One of the weirdest looking creatures on this giant island is certainly the Madagascar Leaf-Nosed Snake. This is a strange snake with what appears to be a leaf growing directly from its nose. The snake is the only one of its genera, which makes it even more unique. As for the strange leaf appendage growing off of its nose, it actually looks quite different whether the snake is male or female. Female snakes have more elaborate nasal appendages, whereas the ones that males have are longer and pointier. No one knows for sure what the exact purpose of these odd nasal appendages are for. Some scientists believe they might be used for sexual signaling between rival males and potential mates, but nobody really knows for sure. These snakes have not been studied as much as others, making them a little mysterious. Number 3. Marine Iguana. Out of all the iguanas in the world, the marine iguana from the Galapagos Islands is by far one of the coolest. The marine iguana is the closest thing we have on our planet to an actual Godzilla. It's also the only lizard in the world that is able to swim through the ocean. They spend much of their time foraging in the sea for algae, as this makes up most of their diet. Some of the bigger male iguanas are even able to dive deep underwater to look for their food, while the smaller iguanas hang out where the tide is low and feast on the algae there. They can dive down to 65 feet and are able to stay submerged for 30 minutes at a time. They also look quite a bit different from a green iguana. Marine iguanas are darker, almost a black-blue colour, and they truly do look like small Godzilla monsters. Male marine iguanas can grow to 4.3 feet long, while females are generally about 2 feet long. Of course, if you want to get a close-up look at these little dragons, the only way to do so is by taking a boat trip out to the Galapagos Islands and seeing where they live in small colonies on the rocky shores. Here, you can watch them basking in the sun after a hard day's swimming. Number 2. Florida Legless Lizard. If you live in Florida and you've never heard of a legless lizard, you have been living under a rock. But of course, not everyone knows that there are 4 species of glass lizard that live in the state, plus 1 species of worm lizard. Both these creatures are considered to be legless lizards, which are often mistaken to be snakes or worms by locals who come across them. But make no mistake, these are not serpents. These truly are the weirdest lizards in the world. Take the glass lizard for example, which has a tail nearly 4 feet long that makes it appear as though it's a snake. But if you look closely, you'll notice it doesn't quite move the same way snakes do. Glass lizards move quite stiffly, and not as slithery as their serpentine friends. Of course, the worm lizard is a whole different story. This is not only a unique reptile, but an extremely disgusting one. It's also never been mistaken for a snake, seeing as it looks like a big flat earthworm. But it's not a worm at all, it's something else entirely. The worm lizard can grow to be nearly 1 foot long, and they live most of their life underground in sandy soil. If you're wondering exactly what makes it a lizard, the fact is that it's not a true lizard. It's part of its own classification, making it very different in the fact that it has scales just like a lizard, but no eyes or ear openings. Florida worm lizards, like glass lizards, are completely harmless. The worm lizard is definitely a freak of nature, but in the best way possible. Number 1. The gharial. The gharial is the most unique type of crocodile in the world. There's really no mistaking it for any other type of croc. It has an extremely long pair of jaws like a pair of needle-nose pliers. Interestingly enough, its name is derived from the word gara, which translates to mud pot. The gharial also lays the largest eggs of any other type of crocodile. Males can be 9 to 16 feet, and females 8.9 to 12 feet. It's also one of the weakest croc species on land because of its small legs and measly leg muscles. This means that they spend almost all of their time in the water, and when they do have to move across land, they do what is known as belly sliding, basically dragging themselves through the mud. If you're wondering why they have such long snouts, it's because they need them to catch fish. Juvenile gharials will eat insects and frogs, while the adults use their long snouts to quickly snatch fish out the water. As for their native habitat, they were once found all through the rivers of Bangladesh, India, and even Pakistan. But today, there are only a few populations still remaining in India, making them very rare to find in the wild. Number 10. Death dragons. A team of paleontologists working in Brazil recently discovered a new kind of pterosaur very close to the small town of Cruzeiro de Oeste. The place in which this fossil was found is known locally as the Cemetery of Pterosaurs, and beneath the soil there are hundreds of fossilized remains just waiting to be discovered. The newest species has been named Keel-Scaled, and it's really the name that makes this discovery so fascinating. Keres, the first part of the name, is actually a female death spirit from Greek mythology that would personify violent deaths. These types of spirits were also associated with doom, and were known to fly over battle zones seeking out the dying. Then there's the second part of the name, Drakon, which is a Greek word that means dragon or human serpent. Basically, this new dinosaur has been named the Death Dragon. The beast probably lived around 100 million years ago, when Brazil was a large and sandy desert. The discovery was only made recently, so we still don't know exactly how big or ferocious the Death Dragon was, but it's safe to say it was scarier than an eagle. Number 9. A disgusting snake. An absolutely disgusting monster has just been recently discovered in Brazil, and it's one of the strangest things ever. It's known as a penis snake, and it's actually a rare type of amphibian that was just discovered by engineers while they were building a dam in a remote part of the Amazon jungle. The penis snake got its name because of the organ that it pretty obviously resembles. But it's not really a snake. This creature is a limbless amphibian that looks like the most disturbing earthworm on the planet. There were actually 6 of these amphibians discovered at the same time. But even with so many specimens, scientists have not been able to find a lot out about these rather suggestive animals. Scientists know that they don't have lungs, and they probably breathe through their skin. They also know that they're probably aquatic, and they most likely feed on small worms and fish. Also, the penis snake navigates primarily by smell, which just seems weird. Number 8. the Mapinguari. The Mapinguari is one of the weirdest things ever found in Brazil. In fact, it might not even be real. It's apparently been sighted in Brazil and Venezuela, and as far south as Paraguay. The Mapinguari has been described as a large, foul-smelling creature with long hair, sharp claws, and a bad attitude. Some reports claim it has a mouth on its abdomen, with some European witnesses claiming the beast has a single eye in the center of its forehead. In 2001, a researcher named David Oren collected 8 different sightings of the Mapinguari and 7 incidences of them being killed. But of course, not a single set of remains has been analysed by professional scientists or even properly photographed. The earliest accounts of the Brazilian Mapinguari were from the 1990s, when cryptozoologists theorised that the Brazilian jungle monster was probably just some kind of prehistoric primate never seen by human eyes. Other, more professional scientists claim that the Mapinguari has probably a leftover of the ancient giant ground sloths that used to rule much of South America. The only thing for sure is that some kind of giant creature is terrorising the jungles of Brazil, and nobody knows what it is. Number 7. A UFO Cover-Up. After there were reports in Brazil of glowing lights coming from the sky in 2020, videos and posts allegedly started to be deleted from social media, and this has sparked a huge controversy that a UFO landed in the country of Brazil and then was covered up by the government. What makes this really crazy is that thousands of people apparently saw the glowing lights, recorded what they saw with their phones, then uploaded the footage online, only to have it vanish. This happened shortly after the plan to storm Area 51 in Nevada failed miserably. But this was quite a far distance from the deserts of Nevada. This happened in the municipality of Mage, near Rio de Janeiro. The clips uploaded by the local civilians clearly showed some kind of phenomenon happening in the sky, with flashing lights and zipping colours everywhere. And even though the Air Force and local authorities claimed that nothing had been flying in the sky that night, apparently hundreds of the uploaded videos disappeared as if some kind of entity online was trying to get rid of the evidence. It's been about a year since this happened, and we still don't know who suppressed the photos or what was in the sky that night. Number 6. The Bone-Crushing Croc. An extremely rare fossil has recently been found in Brazil, and it's leading scientists down a path to learning how the modern crocodile came into existence. This rare crocodile creature lived about 230 million years ago and probably hunted the early dinosaurs. It had 2 very strong hind limbs that were quite similar to the Tyrannosaurus rex, though millions of years older. Its name is Deinonychus collisensis, and it had giant teeth like blades and a long snout. And here's what I mean when I say it was similar to the T-Rex. Instead of being very flat to the ground like modern crocodiles, this beast actually stood on 4 legs, more like how you would expect a dog or big cat to walk around. It also would have had a longer, possibly narrower tail and a bigger, broader head. Basically, this fossil is showing how something that was more like a dinosaur slowly evolved closer to the ground, dipped into the swamps, and over millions and millions of years transformed into what we now have living in people's backyards in Florida. Number 5. Disturbing funeral rituals. In the ancient site of Lapa do Santo in Brazil, researchers have uncovered a treasure trove of seriously strange human remains. Archaeologists have unearthed remains that were elaborately modified by some of the earliest inhabitants of South America about 10,000 years ago. According to the lead researcher on the study, Andre Strauss from the Max Planck Institute of Evolutionary Anthropology, these bizarre remains are showing a whole new side of the sophistication of these ancient cultures. The bodies were found nestled inside of a cave deep in the rainforest, along with tools and even some leftovers of ancient meals. But here's the reason the corpses were so strange. Many of them were dismembered, mutilated, or otherwise ripped apart before being buried. Some of the dead had their teeth ripped out one by one, while others were either burned or cannibalized before being tossed into the burial pits. Unfortunately, the researchers don't actually know the reason for such mutilations prior to the burials. The team has not uncovered any gravestones or grave goods, and there is no obvious explanation for why these kinds of burial rituals were taking place, or even why they stopped. Number 4. Two-headed bat. Check out this two-headed bat found in Brazil. It is literally what nightmares are made out of. Researchers from the Universidade Federal Rural de Rio de Janeiro recently completed research on a specimen of conjoined bat twins found in the middle of nowhere in the jungle back in 2001. The strange creature was already dead when it was discovered, as is almost always the case with animals born with too many heads. To date, it's only the 3rd known case of a bat having 2 heads, at least according to National Geographic. The reason this probably happened was because identical twins failed to split after fertilization. The end result was an animal with 2 heads, an unusually large upper thoracic region, and completely separate forelimbs and hind limbs. Basically, this thing was a horrifying mutant, and if we had these kinds of bats swooping around the trees of Brazil, I doubt anyone would ever visit the country again. As for what type of bat this monster was, researchers say it was the neotropical fruit bat, which can be found all throughout Brazil as well as some parts of the Caribbean. Number 3. Shark hunters. A new study out of Brazil is showing that ancient indigenous groups in the country hunted sharks in such large numbers that shark meat probably constituted at least half of their diet. In fact, the indigenous groups apparently killed so many sharks that they used their teeth in many different aspects of life, including as arrow tips and razor blades. They would even drill holes through shark teeth and turn them into cutting instruments. The ancient people would have used these shark tooth tools for everything from scaling fish to sawing wood. So far, shark teeth have been discovered at seaside settlements in Brazil dating from 8,000 years ago all the way to the 1500s. However, before recently, it was not clear as to what extent the original Brazilians hunted sharks. But now, based on scientific analysis of many different shark teeth found, as well as ancient shark remains left behind by the coastal indigenous people thousands of years ago, researchers know that the indigenous South Americans actually hunted sharks on purpose and even had perfected the art of doing so. But what's truly fascinating is that archaeologists examined at least 3,900 shark specimens left behind by the ancient indigenous people, and they found that they not only hunted one type of shark. Researchers were able to identify at least 47 sharks coming from 15 different species, meaning that the ancient people hunted hammerhead shark and even great whites. Number 2. The House of the Flower. Casa de Flor, also known as the House of the Flower, is a small structure and massive artistic marvel that was apparently inspired by one poor and semi-literate man named Gabriel Joaquim dos Santos. This is one of the most remarkable abandoned places you can find in Brazil. In its prime, it was basically a castle built by a poor and impoverished salt worker. Dos Santos was the son of a former slave who worked his entire life turning stones, pieces of garbage, and even old light bulbs into pieces of art to build his very own palace. The style is described as intuitive Baroque because he built the place just based on his own intuition. He built the house and decorated it inside and out over the years, inspired by his own fantasy and imagination. The sky's the limit. Visitors and art critics consider it a unique expression of spontaneous popular architecture. Gabriel defined it as a house made of shards and made into a flower. Unfortunately, he passed away in 1985. After nearly 65 years of building, his beautiful structure was abandoned. But you can still go and see the remains of the House of the Flowers on your next trip to Brazil. It's since been turned into a local landmark. Number 1. Anacondas. The dark-spotted anaconda is a rare and elusive snake that lives in the Brazilian Amazon. This type of anaconda reaches between 15 and 16 feet in length. Like most other anacondas, this snake loves the water, and they are great swimmers and divers. Their bodies are well adapted to the water too. Both the eyes and nose are set high on the head so they can hunt from the water. They will also rest in branches hanging over lakes and rivers. This allows the dark-spotted anaconda to drop onto its prey from above, as well as to be able to escape quickly if something tries to attack them. The green anaconda is the biggest snake in the world. People tend to overestimate its size just because it's so terrifying, but they can still grow to be around 30 feet. And who knows how big they get deep in the Brazilian Amazon. In 2014, during an episode of Discovery Channel's Eaten Alive, a naturalist named Paul Rossely put on a snake-proof suit and tried to get swallowed by a 20-foot-long green anaconda. Why? Well, just to see what it was like apparently. The conservationist Daredevil managed to provoke the snake into attacking him, but the crew wasn't prepared to watch a man get bitten, constricted, and eaten alive. He panicked when the snake started to put his jaws around his head and crush his arm. Experts rushed to pull Rossely out of the snake's mouth. The poor snake didn't know what hit it. Thanks for watching. Have you ever been to Brazil? Is it on your bucket list? Let me know all about it in the comments, and if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button. See you in the next video.